Hello and welcome to my top games of 2013 list. My name's Lumin and right now I'm finally proud to present to you the 5 games that I enjoyed playing the most this year. And that right there is the one thing I ask you to please keep in mind while watching this video. These are my favorite games of the year. These aren't the best games that came out in 2013. These aren't the games that scored the highest on all the review sites. Nothing like that. These are the ones whether I played them for many hours on end or only a couple of hours that I enjoyed playing the most. So there you go. It had to be said, I had to get that out there and I had to make that clear. Now let's move on to the list, and I gotta mention before I even start on it, the one thing my list told me, and that's actually the reason I didn't put 10 games on the list in the first place, or even more, is that I didn't play enough games in 2013. I didn't spend enough time having a look at different games. I seem to have gotten stuck on certain titles, and I just spent most of my time on them, and that's kind of sad. I should have made that one of my New Year's resolutions, to actually spend more time playing different games, to spend more time trying new games out that I think could potentially be interesting, and hey, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I will. But at number 5, we've got Shadowrun Returns, and this is one that I think would be a bit of a shocker to most people, but from the very first minute or even second that I jumped into that game, it was oozing Infinity Engine at me. It was oozing Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and Planescape Torment, and I guess even games like Arcanum, which were sort of the same but played differently. And that was a feeling, and those were the kind of games that I had missed for so long, and I didn't realize it. Now, I haven't spent that much time with the game. I think I've played about 5 hours, and what I have played, I enjoyed thoroughly. It's sort of a back and forth thing. I jump into it every couple of days, spend a little bit of time in there, and I still have a really good idea of what's going on. And the story itself and the world that the game is set in, it's just so appealing to me. It's the exact kind of thing that I, as a gamer, am interested in. And I, as a gamer, want to see more of. I mean, it starts off in this post-apocalyptic world that just so happens to have so many steampunk and futuristic elements, and then it's got this touch of magic in it. Then there's this murder mystery that you're trying to solve, and that alone was enough to get me hooked. Even if I had only played the first hour or so of the game, this would definitely have made my top games list. Now, the game itself isn't perfect, and I feel that there's so much that they could have done with it to kind of improve it. Voice acting is one thing that I think it sorely misses, and it's not just that I want everything in the game voice acted, it's more just that they didn't even add little things like the characters greeting grunts or sounds or anything like that. So when you're interacting with other characters or NPCs in the world or whatever, it does sometimes feel a little bit weird. So the game isn't without issues, but because of its crazy modding community, so many people that are interested in the game, setting up new campaigns for it, add in their own voice acting to those campaigns, there's just so much to it. And if there were more classic RPGs released in the past year, then I guess I would have had a tougher time choosing which to put on my list, but this one, well, it felt to me like Shadowrun Returns was on its own in that genre. I mean, that's not technically 100% true, but it is kind of sad that there aren't that many of these games coming out, and that I guess people aren't that interested in these kind of games anymore. But Shadowrun Returns does, as I mentioned, have exactly what I was craving. The look and feel of a classic redone for 2013, the perfect setting, turn-based combat, in-depth character customization, thus far at least gripping story and more. The chances are if there wasn't so much reading in Shadowrun Returns, I would have had a full Let's Play on my channel of it. But sadly there is. But that's my number 5, and I'm also kind of excited for the Shadowrun Returns expansion or DLC that's coming out early 2014. That's gonna be fun. Let's move on to number 4, The Wolf Among Us. So this was my first venture into a Telltale game. I didn't play as much of The Walking Dead as I would have liked, and sure, I might have actually had The Walking Dead up in my top 5 if I had played much more of it. Yes, I can say that right now, but I didn't. And I feel like the world that Wolf Among Us was set in, the story that we got to experience, the characters, the lot of it just appealed to me as a person, as a gamer, and appealed to my interests much more than The Walking Dead could ever have. I'm not saying that The Walking Dead was a bad game, I'm just saying that I personally liked the look and feel of The Wolf Among Us much more, and the game genuinely shocked me. It surprised me It kept me on the edge of my seat. It was just a gripping tale, and I'm so glad that I got to experience it. I don't see the gameplay itself as being revolutionary or anything like that. There's nothing super special going on with the mechanics or anything. I just feel like the characters, the voice acting, the way the scenes are set up, the way the world is set up, all of that together just works. It really does. And then you add on top of that the fact that it's all sort of familiar because these are fables or fairy tales that you know perhaps from your youth, from books you've read, from movies you've watched, from series you've watched. I actually watched a bit of Once Upon a Time and I couldn't. It was just a little bit too childish for me, but then this came along and I was like, yes, this is exactly what I've been waiting for. So I jumped in, I immersed myself in that world, I kind of got attached to some of the characters, and I was sad to see some of them go. I'm not gonna spoil anything here, but all in all, the game itself was just great. Not super long, which is actually, in my honest opinion, a plus. It's kind of cool that you have all the different choices that you can make, and then at the end, they tell you which choices you made and compare that to kind of the rest of the world's choices. They tell you which percentage you were in, how many other people chose the same choices as you, and that's fun. There's that interactivity after your experience. It's sort of like watching a movie and then having a chat with your friends afterwards about what they thought, the theories they've got about it, about what went down in the movie, what transpired. It's the same kind of thing. Maybe a little bit less interactive, but you get what I'm saying. So all those reasons together, and probably a whole lot of others that I forgot, put The Wolf Among Us at number 4 for me. Now moving on to number 3, BioShock Infinite. This was definitely not the best shooter of the last year. I'm just putting that out there right off the bat because I want you to understand that's not the reason I have it at number 3. I have it at number 3 because it was once again just an amazing experience. The world that Irrational Games thought up and crafted and threw us into, the characters we met, the visuals, the art style of the game, the lot of it. All of it together. Now, it's interesting because I personally don't see like the overarching story of the game, the big picture, as that big a deal, as anything super special, as anything mind-blowingly amazing. I honestly don't. I see the little things in BioShock Infinite as the greatest accomplishments. The smaller details in the game world, the way some of the characters react towards you, the stuff that you find when you go out of your way to explore in the game. And it's funny because the game is kind of on rails in the way that it's set up, but even so, they still reward exploration. They still reward you for taking your time and just enjoying this world that they so meticulously crafted. The sights, the sounds, and all the rest. And it's funny because the game itself is also not that great a shooter, as I mentioned a mere moment ago. That's definitely not what made it fun for me. It was the rest of the stuff. And there are some scenes that just stick with me. Scenes that I feel probably weren't that significant to a lot of other people, but they ended up being kind of emotional for me. And I'm not going to spoil anything once again, but the game itself and the story told in it, and especially if you add the DLC to it, just felt so meaningful, and I think that's the right word to use to describe it. Even now, so long after the game was released and after I had played the Burial at Sea DLC, which also explained a whole lot extra, I still kind of struggle to put everything together, and that is, once again, just what made it so great to me. I'm still thinking about it to this day. I will remember BioShock Infinite for many, many years to come, and it's interesting because there's a quote that goes something like, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I would see BioShock Infinite as the opposite of that. Again, I literally just said this a minute or two ago, but it's important. The parts are what make BioShock Infinite so special, the little things. Those are the things and those are the experiences that will stick with me. And I guess that is why it's at number 3. That and Elizabeth, and the Songbird, and the soundtrack, and everything else. Now we're moving on to number 2, and number 2 is going to be very interesting because at number 2 I've got 2 different games, and both of these games are still in early access phases, Cube World and Starbound. So Cube World is still currently in alpha, and Starbound is in beta, and both of these games are probably only going to fully launch in 2014, so it feels a little weird putting these up in my list, especially so high up in my list, but because of the time that I spent with these games and the fun that I had with them thus far at least, I feel that it's worth bending the rules this once. Now, I don't really need to explain to you what these games are because I'm almost certain a lot of you already know and you've probably either played them or seen me play them kind of extensively. But I obviously still want to explain why these two titles are at number 2 on my list. So both of these games, both Cube World and Starbound, are kind of the same. In the way that they played, in the way that they set up. They're both sandbox titles, there's a lot of exploration involved, they're procedurally generated. It's sort of a make your own adventure type thing, and it doesn't appeal to everyone because there's no big story that you can follow. There aren't a whole bunch of quests that you can do, not just yet, at least, because they, I guess, still come in. They're still working on those things, but for someone like me who doesn't need that much, for someone like me who can use his imagination, this is perfect. This is the kind of game that I will always have ready on my desktop, installed on my PC for when the exploration or adventure bug bites me, for when I want to head out to just do some glorious battle, to slay some monsters, to craft some goodies, to build something. All of that, any of that. Both of them, and this is one of the things that I really enjoy the most, are great co-op experiences. I've played both Starbound and Cube World extensively with friends, and it is just so enjoyable. Then the fact that these games are constantly evolving and changing with updates and stuff like that being applied, more so Starbound at the moment than Cube World, but you get what I'm saying, and even Cube World in its current state, without it having been updated for the past 3 months or something ridiculous like that, is something I would heartily recommend to anyone looking for that kind of experience. I played something ridiculous like 170 hours of Terraria. My Steam says so, and you know, Steam doesn't lie. And I feel like I will probably eventually get that amount of time in Starbound, and maybe when Walla updates Cube World, I'll start spending more time in there as well. And that right there, the sheer value that you get out of the purchase of this seemingly small indie title is just insane. Value, I guess, in terms of hours of entertainment. So I had a ton of fun with both of these games over the past couple of months that they've been out. I can't say over the past year, but for Starbound, for instance, even the couple of weeks that it's been out now were enough to convince me of the sheer magnificence of this title. Same obviously goes for Cube World. The amount of time that I spent with the game after it launched, or at least after the alpha launched, was obviously a little bit unhealthy, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every single moment of it. I guess at the end of the day, I'm just a sucker for sandbox games, for exploration, for sci-fi. I mean, Starbound. You get to have your own spaceship. You can upgrade it, you can build on it, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. There are so many big plans that they have for the future. I'm gonna stop now because I will probably yak forever about this. But those are my number 2 choices. Now we're going to move on to number 1, and number 1 is probably the most predictable thing ever. You all knew it was coming. My number 1 game of 2013 was Hearthstone. Now before I even start talking about it, I will just say that I consider Hearthstone a fully complete title already. Sure, they're still patching it, there are still things that need to be changed. Everyone can't actually get access right the heck now, but it did soft launch this year, and I consider it out. So Hearthstone. I don't even know where to begin with this game. I play Hearthstone on a daily basis without fail. I do my daily quests every single day. I love this game, and I knew from the very first moment that I saw it, when they announced it at PAX, I knew that this was the Blizzard game for me. I still love Diablo, I love World of Warcraft, I love the Warcraft series, I love StarCraft. Yes, and yes, but Hearthstone is just something else. It has something else to it that just attracts me, that just makes me want to log in and play every second of the day. And again, that's kind of unhealthy because I gotta do work. I gotta make videos. I have to go do things and talk to people and phone people and send emails. But instead I play Hearthstone. I can't help it. I have bought card packs. I've invested money into this game, and I don't even feel the slightest tinge of regret because of that. Not even a little bit. No, because of the amount of time that I've spent in it, because of the hours of fun and entertainment that I get out of it, because of the hours of challenge of mental stimulation. This game deserves to be at my number one spot, and if I can put it at my number one spot again for 2014, I will do it. And if I can't, well, I'll try and find a way to do it. Maybe they'll release an expansion sometime next year and I can put that at the top. Hearthstone. I love it. I absolutely love it. I get to play against friends, I get to play against strangers, I get to enjoy all of it. It is great. And when this game finally launches, I feel like it's just gonna take over the world. I mean, a lot of you guys already know I have a history with Magic the Gathering. I used to play it. And right now, after having played Hearthstone for a little while, I can't even compare the two anymore. I have no urge to go back to Magic at all, not in the least. And I know it's not the same thing, and it's kind of slanderous and disrespectful towards Magic, because I still respect the game and I would probably enjoy the game regardless if I had to play it right now. Hearthstone just filled that void in my heart, and it's gonna stay there probably forever. It is also just that much more fun, fast-paced, exciting, and everything else. I mean, there are only 300 and something cards at the moment, but the amount of stuff you can do with them, the amount of creativity you can pour into the creation of a deck is just absolutely ridiculous. It is. And I just constantly find myself thinking about what I want to do with my next deck, which class I want to try next, how I can use specific cards that I perhaps just got, how I can fit a different legendary that I am thinking of crafting into the decks that I currently have. It is just too good. It really does feel like a Blizzard game, and it makes sense that there's a Blizzard game at the top of my list because those guys know what they're doing. This just proves it once again. With Hearthstone, they delivered. It's fast-paced, it's fun, it's frantic, it's easy to learn and way too difficult to master. It has infinite replayability with stuff like the arena and the new ranked play system that you can just try and work your way up. It's great! And then, on top of all of that, the feeling of opening card packs. Even if I've got all the basic cards, it's still just so satisfying. Really, it is. I don't know how they managed to make it feel the same as it did all those years ago when I was opening Magic booster packs. I don't know how they did it, but they did. They done did it, and I am addicted. But that's it, I'm done gushing about Hearthstone. I hope I was able to convey the reasons for it being at number one on my list. Now, before finishing this off, there are a couple of honorable mentions that I need to add, and I'm going to divide these into two categories. The first being the games that I played, and I think could potentially have been in there if I maybe just enjoyed a little more or played more of. Because some of these I know are Game of the Year material, but I just didn't play enough of them. Starting with GTA 5. That definitely could have been higher up on my list, but I've only played a couple of hours of it, and I feel like I really would have had to have played more to be able to put it somewhere in my top 5. Metro Last Light, Path of Exile, Dota 2, which I guess technically launched this year, Saints Row 4, StarCraft 2, Heart of the Swarm, Tomb Raider, and Far Cry 3, Blood Dragon. Then games that I didn't play at all, but I'm also almost sure would have been somewhere higher up on my list. The Last of Us, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, Pokemon X and Y, that could potentially been at number 1 or number 2. Animal Crossing New Leaf, also super sad that I didn't get to play that. The Walking Dead, Fez on PC, Spelunky, Rogue Legacy, and a whole bunch of other indies that I feel I should actually have, I don't know, played more of, had more of a focus on in some way. I feel bad about that. I really do. But as I said at the start, the one thing my list has told me is that I need to play more games in 2014. And I will. I give you my word that I will. Now I'm going to have a most anticipated games of 2014 list coming up, which is going to be a jumble of a whole bunch of different stuff. You can look forward to that over the next couple of days. But I'm done. That's my list of top 5 games of 2013. And I would love it if you guys could give me your top 5 games of the past year. That would be great. I like to compare because I do feel like my list is a little bit different than many other people's lists. So that's what you can do for me. Leave a comment, let me know what your top 5 games were. And you don't really need to tell me exactly why if you don't want to, because I know that's, sometimes a bit too much effort. You don't want to spend an hour typing a YouTube comment, but if you want to give some details, do it. A straight up numbered list, however, would definitely be enough. So we could get a bit of an idea of whether or not my choices, my top 5 games, are much the same as yours or not. I'm done though. Check back here soon for more. Give this video a like, share it, and do all that other good stuff. Most importantly though, happy gaming in 2014. And happy hoping that 2014 is going to have as many amazing games in it as 2013 did. Happy that.